Thank you so much for your willingness that you agreed to record this reference video with me. And I'm really delighted to have you here. Where have you been on a professional and a personal level when you first decided or started thinking about working with a coach as a sparring partner? And maybe it also helps the audience that you quickly introduce yourself, that we get a feeling of who you are.
So I'm a lawyer by background, but have worked internationally for the better part of 20 plus years at sea level or just below sea level. Ended up as a general counsel of a European company and was at a point in my life where I had to make a decision whether to pursue being a general counsel or whether I wanted something different. And I actually heard you speak and decided that was the right fit for me to figure out what I wanted to do next. And so we embarked on our coaching session.
Yes, we actually did. And it was a big ride and it was so much fun working together. What specifically made you decide to choose myself? Because I think you also looked into other coaches when you thought about sparring, because it's something that's really, from my perspective, it's very important that chemistry and trust are a good match, because it goes very deep. The 8 weeks are pretty intense, and we exchange on a quite confidential level as well.
Well, what first attracted me was your enthusiasm, quite frankly. But not only that, it was also the fact that I could work on a peer-to-peer basis with someone who has similar experiences to me, working in big international firms at high levels in the organization. What also attracted me specifically was that you're not a lawyer and have no legal background. On the contrary, you come from sales. And that to me was something which was something I needed. Someone who could actually challenge me in that area, because yes, I'm a businesswoman. I've worked as a businesswoman for years, but at the same time, that front-facing side of things was not something I had elaborately in my quiver. And last but not least, of course, your laughter and the fact that we can have also, as a woman to woman, this kind of open exchange that I really enjoy that, honestly.
Oh, thank you so much for these kind words. And initially, when we started, you decided to embark with me the Portfolio-Karriere program, because at the beginning you were still a little bit unsure whether there might be an opportunity to go back in a full-time employment in corporate, or whether you want to pursue a board career only, or whether you might want to step into self-employment fully. So when we initially started, we started with the portfolio program, but then as we went on the journey together, you even extended to the be your own boss. Could you maybe describe what happened during our collaboration, why you moved from the Portfolio-Karriere program then and extended into the Be Your Own Boss during our coaching?
Oh, absolutely. So career coaching to me was very much about figuring out what was going to be my path going forward. And ultimately, thanks to the coaching, I was able to define for myself what my path would be. And that was essentially saying, I'm going to have a portfolio career and no longer seek full-time employment at sea level in an organization. And so ultimately, that then meant I had to figure out not only what I was going to do, but also what it was going to be my independence going to look like, and what's my business plan, and all of these type of aspects. And trying to do that on your own was going to be impossible. So I figured who better than you to help me on that voyage? Help me by challenging me also with your experience to embark on this idea of not only seeking board mandates, but more specifically also seeking independence by setting up my own consultancy company.
Yeah, thank you, Dominique. And maybe also for our audience to describe what actually is a portfolio career, maybe I quickly define what it means in our thinking. So basically, my definition of a portfolio career is that you basically spread your expertise that you collected over the last decades in the corporate world across different income streams, which ideally enrich each other so that to the market you have a specific expert status, which basically builds your reputation, your personal brand. And then ideally, when you acquire one project, ideally you generate other projects going forward in collaboration with your customers. And then because I spoke about the portfolio career program that you initially embarked and where you mentioned, okay, yes, then we looked for clarity first. What are the options out there? Then the consequential next step, stepping into the Be Your Own Boss program, is then basically really driving then the final execution from the business plan that you mentioned that we worked on together, then really putting it into action. Because I'm always saying a coaching is only as good as basically the other person executes. Because you can plan internally whatever, but then if you don't go to the outside and if you don't start executing, then you lose basically the main value from a coaching. What would you say have been the most important takeaways from our collaboration?
I think there are three for me. First of all, there are no wrong answers. But at the same time, it's about being very honest with yourself about where you stand. Both in terms of your aspirations, your capabilities, and also your financial stability. The third thing I would mention is you need courage. You need courage to also step outside your comfort zone and think about things you would never have thought about previously.
I like very much that you mentioned the fact that there is no right or wrong answer, because that's exactly what I would also personally respond, because portfolio career is very specific. And what you also mentioned is the financial stability. And I mean, in this case, you've been a role model anyways, because you are one of the very few persons, and that's a big compliment, Dominique, you have clarity about your financial situation. A lot of people who come to me don't know that. So this is part of the portfolio career program to basically get clarity on how is your financial basis, because building a portfolio career and building a new identity basically also takes time. And the more clarity you have exactly about these two topics that you mentioned, A, it's very specific, there is no right or wrong. So let's really elaborate all the options out there. And B, then working on what does it mean financially, it helps a lot. It gives you a lot of peace of mind to know, hey, there is financial stability in the background and I have 3 or 6 months to get the game rolling. Yeah. So thank you very much for these three aspects. Very, very valuable, I think. What were the biggest challenges you faced during the coaching and during the transformation journey?
For me, I think it's believing in yourself, being confident of your own skill set and abilities, being also confident in the feedback you get from others about your competencies and abilities. A challenge for me is also sticking the path. There are a lot of other distractors which exist, and you have to really stick the path and maintain focus. And I think that ultimately, once you get a decision taken, that's an important aspect to it. And the third thing is implementation. I think knowing how to implement, and there again, Elisabeth, I can't thank you enough in helping work through that aspect of it. Because of course the path to market is different than it could and would have been 10, 15, 20 years ago.
You're referring now to the new platform, social media, and all the funnel building options that you have out there. Yeah, and I think you mentioned courage A, focus B, and then discipline and execution C. And I think especially coming from a very, let's say, traditional profession like lawyer, thinking about a portfolio career and stepping back from that very high salary that you were also earning. I mean, you look back on a particularly successful career, and then having the shift of identity to say, hey, let me think about, is this all or what's next? That requires a certain personality. So that's also really a big compliment from my side to you, that you even were that open-minded to think about what are the options out there. And always when I start a portfolio career program with my clients, we never know what's the outcome. Some decide I go back because once they realize what's behind a portfolio career, they decide, oh, it's too complex, I don't want to go that path. Or what you mentioned, the focus, discipline, execution is quite complex. And then the other thing, which I'm also grateful that you mentioned it, is the focus. Especially, I think, with people who come from such an impressive career like yourself, having worked across the globe, different industries, different leadership roles, then to pick your priorities or what did you enjoy most is also something that in consequence means I have to let go of certain things that I'm also capable of doing, but I don't longer enjoy that, or I don't longer want to do that. So very good points that you mentioned. Thank you so much for that also. When you look back, what aspects of my coaching approach had the greatest impact on you?
I think it was the challenges you gave me. We had very open and frank discussions, and I appreciated those. And you sent me back to the drawing board a couple of times, and that was exactly what I needed. So I can't thank you enough for that, because I think that really helped. But at the same time, due to the exchange, the output became so much richer.
Yeah, and I know what you mean with I have sent you back to the drawing point. I mean, this was always giving feedback on a very high level input already, but as you said, we wanted to basically really get your positioning right, because as I mentioned before, you have so many good capabilities and qualities and experience and topics that you could have focused on, that particularly also on what you mentioned, how do you acquire customers nowadays, particularly as a solopreneur, which also relates to the new social media platforms. The positioning has to be very precise. That's why we turned the circle several times to really be crystal clear. What do you stand for, and what do you offer, and who do you want to address with that offer? Because this is, from my perspective, the central part of the portfolio career coaching in terms of what is my new identity and which target audience do I want to attract with that.
Yeah.
So now as I said, you extended, and the initially 8 weeks have been, I think, 3 to 4 months overall we worked together. So where do you stand today, both professionally and personally? What did you decide in the end?
Well, I decided to A, pursue a portfolio career. B, we've launched the board CV into the ether. And there's going to be a soft launch shortly of my coaching career, so that I can start embarking on that. And in other words, I have implemented the portfolio career approach, and now it's seeing what's going to happen for the next 6 months, test drive and see if it finds its audience.
Yeah, test drive. That's actually a good point we didn't talk about. You also, during the process, always went back to your personal network and basically, how we say in German, felt the temperature. If what we were working on resonated on the market. You got very valuable feedback, which we then implemented. Would you say that this was something that was worthwhile doing as well? Talking with somebody, although the concept is not 100% ready yet, but then basically going back to the circles that we discussed before?
Oh, definitely. You do need to use the network you have to just touch base, see if you're on the right path, if you're not completely off point, have that feedback into what you're doing, reformulate, come back. And that's also part of the iterations you mentioned earlier. It's part of the process. It has to be part of the process. And I'm glad we did it.
Cool. No, and I agree. I mean, I'm not a legal expert, right? So I can only give you the thinking process, the tools, the methodology. I can show you the vision in the end where I ideally want my clients to end up, but the temperature feeling or test the market is something that you guys have to do with your network, with other experts to see is it the right thing? And you did that also very well. And what I also like now that we talk about, we actually then disqualified certain things as well because we realized this basically takes you a little bit off track, and that means losing focus. And then we redefined it and we went in another direction. Now that we're talking, I remember that this was part of the process, but it's cool, yeah. So what would you say to someone who is considering working with me but still unsure whether such a sparing is really worthwhile? What would you recommend this person?
I would recommend you do it, and do it sooner than later, because the market is changing. It's always been good to look about where you stand and where you are wanting to be in 5 years. But certainly if you're above 50, it's even more important to have that vision for yourself. Where do you want to go? What are your options? What's your plan B? What's your plan C? In doing the coaching itself, I think there are 3 things I would suggest that people take into account. You need time. You can't just do it on the fly. You do need to have time. You have to seriously think about things, and be honest with yourself. You need time to put your thoughts to paper, assess yourself, which then brings me to my second point. You need to be honest with yourself. And I think especially give yourself time, be honest. And the third one is always keep in the back of your mind something we've said earlier. There's no wrong or right. Where you stand today may not be the answer where you want to stand in 5 years.
Yeah, and that's actually my own experience that I also had when I founded my own company. Once you start to pursue your portfolio career or solopreneurship, you are constantly questioning or reshaping your go-to-market depending on the resonance of the market as well. But one point that you mentioned about time, I remember most of my clients ask me, what am I doing with you 8 weeks? But then at the end, we always think, oh, 8 weeks are already gone because, as you said, you need time. And the program is consciously 8 weeks because the important parts are the days in between when we meet, because then basically the change happens, the reflection happens, the transformation happens, but also the ambivalence goes in the one or the other direction in terms of, do I go back to a self-employment, full-time deployment, or do I pursue a portfolio career? And as you said, there is no right or wrong. It's more, you can listen to your gut feeling, you listen where you get energized when you start working on a topic. So yeah, time is important. Would you also say that once you sign such a contract that you basically commit to a sparing or a coaching, you give yourself also another commitment to work on yourself with regards to discipline and execution, really thinking something from A to Z?
Oh, absolutely. If you're not going to give yourself that commitment, don't do the coaching. It's as simple as that, because it's so much more valuable. It's so fruitful if you really commit yourself to doing it that way. Yeah.
And most people 50 plus have never done that, because the career always went smooth. You always went up the career ladder like yourself. I mean, you rarely take time for yourself. My experience shows that you always deprioritize yourself. And once you come to the point where you step into such a sparing, and here, Dominique, I really have to also make you a compliment. You were so disciplined in execution then. When you did the homework, when you came back, we really always had a very good basis for discussion. And that's also from my side, it's very important that my counterpart works on the tasks and the thought process I'm sending them through. If you wouldn't have been that engaged and that committed, the outcome wouldn't have been what we in the end achieved. So also from my side, a really, really big thank you. It was so much fun. And as you said, we laughed so much together.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed it. And once again, a big thank you that you agreed to record this reference video. That's really appreciated. Thank you very much.